MegaDads Overworld is a mature-rated podcast for mega grown-ups only. So if your back hurts right now, just have a seat.
Here we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first, the rookie card, the debut, the one episode that airs before Netflix cancels us, of MegaDads Overworld, or Open World. We still haven't settled on the name, which is really sad because we're already recording an episode. But that we'll see how it goes. But this is about the wider world of video games. Let other shows handle the timely news and the reviews and all this stuff, and some of that will come about. Some of that will happen as just part of the conversation. But we want to look at the people behind the scenes and all of the little kind of sub-quests throughout the gaming world that are out there. Because as much as the gaming media will talk about very, very narrow things, very specific things, and often very controversial things, we're not into the controversy. We're going to talk to the boring folks. Although our opening guest is far from boring, so I guess I probably should amend that. I don't know. We'll fix it in post. That's fine. But before we get to him, I want to welcome my co-chair, my second seat, Mr. Jonathan Jaramillo. And I tried.
You did it. No, that was great.
Right? Okay, good.
You did do it right. Yes.
I had the white guy panic there for a second with the name, and it was just like I about halfway through, I'm like, am I doing this wrong? Oh God. But we just call him Jonathan. Welcome, sir.
No worries. I'm Jonathan. Great to be here. Really, really looking forward to speaking to Luke, and then of course being a part of this podcast. Definitely just for people, because people probably don't know who I am and why I'm here. My background is in recruitment. I do interviews and things like that for a living, and I've been a gamer for since let's go with the late 80s. So it's one of those things where it's kind of combining two things, big parts of my life, and I really want to learn more about the gaming world. And so this seemed like a good idea to partner with Evan to do this. So looking forward to getting into it and looking forward to meeting some people.
And you are the newest MegaDad, I think.
Yes, I think I am the newest one. They recently photoshopped me in there on the far right. So yeah, I think I'm official.
It does look like a little bit of a kidnapping photo, but it works. And that's more of me criticizing my boss's photoshopping skills than anything.
Sorry, I have the mustache at that time, so we'll see if that look lasts.
Well, at least one of us can grow facial hair, but that's a discussion for another time. Now, those of you that listen to MegaDads Checkpoint, and when I was hosting that, you'll be somewhat familiar with this format. What we're going to do is I'm going to come on. We've got a second chair, which we often did. Jonathan's going to be sticking around pretty much for every show, kind of a standard co-host there. We're not going to have the rotating people, although I'm sure other MegaDads will appear from time to time. And then we have a third guest. And in the case of Open World, like I said, it's about people on the edges of the video gaming world. We're going to be talking with developers. We're going to be talking with journalists and streamers and things like that. But we're also going to be talking about the people that help those people and the people that help those people, and so on and so forth. I'm really excited. We're really want to lean into the interview format and less about my psychological issues, which again, if you've listened to Checkpoint, you're very familiar with. Without further ado, I want to introduce this episode's guest, the great Luke Davis, which might be one of the hardest SEO names we've had to deal with, because there's 3 main Luke Davises in the world as far as Google is concerned, and one of them is here. The other 2 is a surfer and an actor. And the actor is in Halo, so there's already a video game connection. But this man, actually, I don't know. Luke, are you a surfer?
It's so funny you bring that up. I knew about the surfer, but I'm almost ashamed to admit I didn't know about the Halo connection, the other Luke Davis running around out there. So wow, that's what great company to be in.
Yes, yes. He's been a pretty prolific actor in the last few years here. But yeah, I think the biggest credit as far as this show's concerned is, yes, he was on the Halo live action show.
Wow. We're not.
Wow.
I don't think we have time to talk about the Halo live action show on here, but man, Luke Davis's, we're great. Even if there's a couple of us out there,
there's a couple of you.
How good company to be in.
You represent the names well.
Wow, thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
thank you.
the other one that's not an actor is a surfer model. So, I mean, there's a lot of good pedigree with that name. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, never got into surfing though. Well, maybe for the next podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So, but why are you here then? Because if you're not a surfer, you're not a model, you're not an actor. Why would you come on this show?
Yeah, for sure. I loved how y'all introduced this, like the edges of gaming, the people that help the people that help the people. I think for me, I've been a gamer for longer than I probably want to admit as well. Had an experience today at our preview day for our college where I had a student come up and ask what a Game Boy Advance was, and that made me feel very old. But I'm here because I essentially have found my way into kind of the edges of gaming. So after working for most of my career in higher education admissions, helping students get to college, all that kind of sort of cool thing. But being a gamer for my whole life, kind of ended up accidentally almost working at Bungie on a contract recruiter position for them, working with their intern and early career roles. So through that, about 9-10 months, was able to hire for art roles, game design roles, publishing, production roles, and then essentially help build their intern and early career program, which was really, really fun to be a part of. That contract ended, and essentially then found my way to DigiPen Institute of Technology, which is a small school up in the PNW. That's the first college in the world to do a game design program. So we've been around for about 30 years and teach game design, game art, game programming, game audio, and kind of married my higher ed experience and my gaming nerd knowledge and time at Bungie all together in one awesome package. And I really found kind of the passion for especially like these questions of like, how do you get into the gaming industry? What do you do as a student? How do you learn the skills that you need to learn to get into the industry? And just love talking about it. So happy to be here.
Fantastic, and really that's how I came across you, and we both have that recruiter background, and I've been in tech and gaming and recruitment honestly are all connected right now, especially kind of out in the market, and we'll kind of go over this a little bit later on how rough it is out there right now, really for anyone who's in gaming, interested in recruitment, tech, anything like that. It's so unstable, and so I think you had posted a few posts kind of in support of what's been going on recently. I know the recent layoffs at Activision was kind of the biggest deal I think that happened within the past couple of weeks. And so I really admired your support that you put out there, and being someone who I was unemployed as a recruiter there for a few months, and really kind of seeing that side of the difficulty there. It's become a bit of a passion of mine, I think, really trying to help people in this area.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the cool things, I think, coming in, I did not think that I'd ever be able to get a job in games, right? I'm a like Midland artist. I nerd enough about random graphical VFX stuff. I like have a little bit of like narrative, side of things. I've started DMing. So there's like a bunch of pieces that I love, but I was never like, I'm going to get a job in this field, right? Because I am an artist, I'm a programmer. So it kind of, I almost feels like it accidentally was just the right timing where Bungie was looking for someone with more higher ed experience and more recruiting experience. But, having gone through that period of not having a job and being like, wow, can I even get back to the industry here? Can I even, what am I supposed to do now? One of the cool things that I think you see in the gaming industry is because it's like a smaller subset of tech almost is kind of the way to think about it. It's got a lot of overlap in tech. We're seeing a lot of the downside of the past like 2 years, year and a half. The sharing that same kind of DNA as tech. But I think the people in this industry are really like you said, like wanting to be there to help other people. It's hard because sometimes the gaming industry is so small, there's just literally not enough roles to go around. But there's that sense of like community support and people really wanting to like go the extra mile to support. All like you said, the Activision Blizzard layoffs. There's been a whole bunch of ones before that to follow. But I think the community here is something that like once you're part of it, you're like, wow, this is a genuinely good community, and people are looking out for each other, which is very motivating to be a part of on either side, right? It's helpful when you're on the side of looking, and then once you got something, I feel like people are really good about giving back.
Yes, and that's what I really admire about the gaming community, because you look at the overhead, and you can make parallels to our country or whatever, but you look at the overhead and you have companies who prioritize profit over people. I mean, let's just say what it is, and it's the only way that that's going to change is to support each other as a community, and in different ways, and in different movements or whatever you would like to do, or whether it's community of what we're doing, trying to help people find jobs, find resources, and all that sort of stuff. But it makes me less pessimistic than when I watch these, the people complain about the different things that are happening in the gaming, and the focus on the different microtransactions, or whether the focus is, not enough narrative or not enough graphics or whatever it may be. It kind of comes back down to, hey, the people who are on the ground, they love this shit, and they will continue to do this as much as they can. And I've really identified with that, I think. So, I'm really, really thrilled to speak with you, and kind of get to know a little bit more about, what y'all are doing there at DigiPen and all that sort of stuff.
But before we get into that,
yes,
we have a big question, which if you've listened to Checkpoint, you know that I'm a big fan of kind of dumping a random question on the guest, and often the co-host. But I've been scolded enough about that I'm now getting the co-host more involved in this part of it. But a big question that is kind of like an icebreaker question, and Luke, I know you've been to enough corporate retreats and things like that. You know how lame these can often be. But hopefully this one isn't too bad. I'm going to hand it off to my co-host, Jonathan, to give us the big question.
All right. So the question here is, from the last game that you played, what character would be the best teacher, and what would they teach?
Oh, wow. That is, I feel particularly seen by this question because it's higher ed and gaming. So first off, I don't know why there was caveats. This is an amazing question. Last game I played, who would be the best teacher, and what would they teach? Wow, man, I don't know if this is gonna say something about me, but the last game I played was Deadlock. I have been as not someone that's typically into MOBAs. I've dabbled in League and Smite back in the day, a little bit of Heroes of the Storm. I always kind of dabbled and was like, okay, this has elements I find fun, and then I never kind of got stuck in. But I've been fairly obsessed with Deadlock recently. I think it's good. It's for someone that has more shooting, FPS type like competitive stuff, but like likes the MOBA elements. It's been, man, I didn't think I would get this much into it, but I am. But I think Dynamo would be a great professor. I'm pretty sure he actually is a professor in the lore. It's early release, kind of, friends and family testing, so I don't know how baked in the lore is, but I think Dynamo just seems like he'd be that cool professor that just is jolly and doesn't really have, a human body anymore, but, seems like a cool dude outside of that. So that's who I'd pick.
Evan, do you want to answer the next one, or do you want me to answer?
Well, see, I'm quick checking if he's actually a professor, or do we know that yet? I'm looking this up now. I'm similar to you, Luke, where it's like I've done a little bit of MOBAs, but I'm also like incredibly uncompetitive, so that makes it hard for me to get super into them. He does have a floating head and a bow tie, so I'm going to go ahead and call him a professor, if for no other reason than that.
I think he is. I think there's a voice line that pops up if you die or something. There's like the creepy MOBA boss in your base will go like, they've killed the professor or something like that.
Okay,
so that's
that
entirely unsubstantiated,
like
but
that.
I think that's where I'm going to go.
Well, no, I missed it. What do you think Dynamo would teach? Like what?
I think he would teach. He's got to be physics prof.
Physics?
I mean, he's going into black holes. He's got his abilities. He disappears in a black hole, reappears, draws people into like a suction for his ult. So it's got to be physics.
That works. My choice. One of the games I'm playing right now quite a bit is Zenless Zone Zero, which I talked about in the essentially the last episode of Checkpoint. But it is from the Hoyoverse, Genshin Impact being probably the biggest one. But it is their take on kind of modern urban fantasy sci-fi kind of thing. But I'm going to pick from that game. I'm going to pick the main characters, actually, Belle and Wise. They are the the brother sister pair that you pick at the beginning of the game, who's gonna be your avatar, and I'm gonna choose small business on them because. So in the world of Zenless Zone Zero, it's sort of post-apocalyptic. It's kind of vague exactly about where it sits in that. But it is essentially modern technology levels. And yet they run a successful VHS-based video store. So clearly they know what they're doing. Like they have to be doing something right to keep a business like that afloat in an era. Marketing. I mean, you have literal robots in this world. So it's like technology has at least given us the DVD at that point. In fact, I think like DVDs are actually part of the upgrade system. So like DVDs and disc-based media exists, but they keep a VHS-based, and they're very clear that it is a tape-based business. They keep that working. Now, granted, they have the side business of being essentially kind of black market hackers, but that's a separate thing. You know, they're still bringing in money. So it's I would say definitely small business administration. I think they would, and probably more Wise, the brother of the two, seems to be more with it on the actual like administration side of things. But I think it would be an interesting like dual taught class. Jonathan, what about you now? You've stalled for time long enough.
So I'm currently playing Cult of the Lamb. And so it's super freaking addicting, and I have not had a lot of sleep the past couple of nights. Anyways, if you're familiar with it, it's basically it's a roguelike, and you build this community, this cult, and one of the characters that you interact with is kind of the he's the one that tried to build the cult beforehand. Like he was the one that failed, and so he's kind of off on his doing his own thing, and he helps the lamb develop the cult and all these sort of things. So he's who I would pick. I would want him to teach the dice game that they play in the game is called Knuckle Bones. And it's really fucking fun, and I'm really good at it. And so I would have him teach that to more people, so I can play them and play for money and make more money. So that is my answer, and is a little self-serving, but yeah, I'm gonna go with it.
I thought you might have been going with like religious studies or like leadership. You know, I was thinking of like the Cult of the Lamb. I'm like, what other classes like would that be good for? I'm like psychology, you know, like
well, this
social
guy wasn't
psychology.
good at it though.
But he wasn't. That's what I'm saying. He wasn't good at it. Now all he does he just chills in his cabin. His friends come over and they play this dice game all the time. And obviously he's good enough to keep playing all the time because they play for money. So all right, he can teach more people.
Yeah,
let's give the guy his retirement.
And he does sound like a professor emeritus. I'll just say that. Just sitting in his cabin, goofing off. Yep. No, I think that plays. So let's talk, Luke. Let's talk about the world that you inhabit. And actually, we're going to start with the world you used to inhabit, which was you mentioned you were doing tech recruiting, and that got you into Bungie. And so when like what era Bungie was this? Was like which Halo was out by that point?
Gosh, this is pretty recent. So this is all Destiny 2, one of the games that I have probably the most hours in as a fan, and kind of what led me to start, you know, trolling the job boards for Bungie and like seeing what would come up. So this was Destiny 2 era, about 2022 to 2023 was when I was on board on a contract with them. So all Destiny, working on that kind of stuff.
And you said that you were essentially an intern. Were you intern development or intern recruiting? Like where did you fit? Like what was your role?
For the way that they set it up was essentially they had early careers recruiters, and so that we partnered with to do both early career. So when I say early career, you know, it's like you'll see some other studios kind of have this kind of language. Not as much in the past year, unfortunately, as previously, but you'll see some that have early career language or like transitional candidates, so candidates that are either early out of graduation of a schooling system, or they're transitioning into gaming from a different field. So we hired both for roles for that, but we also had an intern program that we hired for as well, which again, that kind of fit exactly with my higher ed experience. So we were doing both interns and early career roles, but it fit under the recruiting bucket, which I think most studios will have it kind of be a similar route where there's either recruiters, maybe you have like a program manager as well that's kind of managing the program. When you look at the larger, programs like Riot or Blizzard that have some of the larger intern programs at gaming studios, it'll probably be a mixture of recruiters and PMs, but that's kind of the way that it was at least at Bungie.
And so, like, how long would you work with someone when I think of someone in your position, and this could be just my ignorance in how recruiting works, but is it like, I almost think of it like closer to like an academic advisor, where you're like you kind of have your roster or your group of people that you're kind of shepherding through the process, and it's like, at what point do you cut them loose? At what point do you, like, how much are you developing them over time with a specific goal?
For sure. No, and it's a good question, and even kind of making it a broader scope than just Bungie recruiting for interns too. I think the general way that you'll see kind of work with interns in the gaming industry is you'll have obviously kind of the recruiters for the roles and the people that are actually like hiring for the interns, because they're in one sense an intern. If you're at Riot and you're a narrative design intern, right, writing for League, your day-to-day job, you're helping out with narrative design. Maybe you're working on champion lore, you're working on story content, seasonal content, live service content, assisting that department. You're embedded with that department. But then there's also often stuff, and I think Blizzard is a really good example of this, if anyone's ever curious to go to some of the content that they have online about their Blizzard intern experience. But they have like basically a series of support and kind of that the recruiters or the intern PMs will kind of put on for the interns as well. So it's almost like you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you get kind of the reason that I liked the field, and I'm really hoping that after this bump in the industry that we see studios starting to open up more and more internships again, because I think it's such a cool thing where you're embedded on a team, you're learning from professionals in these awesome fields, and you're also getting that support, kind of like you said, like the academic advising, where you're getting, we're teaching like how to, you might do a support that's like, hey, here's how to work on a resume, here's how to, when you do other interviews, here's how to do a better interview practice. So we're also treating them as a student, not just as a full-blown professional in their field, but you get access to that as well. So that's typically kind of what you'll see when you look around. And the good news is there's a lot of companies that are still doing internships. I think Second Dinner for the Marvel Snap team just posted a whole bunch of their internships for the upcoming year. Fall is typically when a lot of these studios will start putting out internship postings, like right about now, to try to get in that kind of school year cycle. So the good news is you're seeing some still, but I'm hopeful that after this bump we'll see even more open up.
And the intern program and the way that the gaming industry does it is very similar to what big tech does, obviously. And so, I mean, it's very similar. They really try to really develop who they have there. And then I think that focus on ingrown talent and kind of that mentorship that tech companies really try to provide and gaming companies really try to provide, I think that's something that, yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to see that companies kind of going back to that because of the stability that we all want, right? That both candidates and both companies want, that it's going to have to come through, I think, kind of that internal movement, internal focus on developing people in their early careers, which is something that has not been a focus for a lot of companies, in my opinion, really over the past 10, 15 years. Not to make it like a millennial generational thing, but yeah, I think that, there was kind of a generational gap there where there wasn't this focus on, okay, let's develop our talent for the next 10, 15 years.
But moving on to the more academic side of things, like, are you... There's this kind of thing in tech, and I think it's kind of spreading through other industries, where there isn't the... I don't want to say there isn't the loyalty anymore, but I mean, that's kind of what it is you're kind of it's no longer normal to be at the same company for 10, 20, 30 years. And like, are you, when you're getting into, for me, I'm stupidly loyal. So when I start out something, I assume that that's the path. Like, I'm going to be here for a while. And so like when you're working with interns or early, like you mentioned, early career people, like, how much do you talk about the fact that like you might not be here in a year, 2 years, whatever? Like how much of it is I am training you to work at X company, and how much of it is I am training you to work in this industry, and you're just going to have to expect that you're going to be hopping around for the next decade?
For sure. And I think Jonathan could probably speak better to the general tech side. That's not something I'm as familiar with, having kind of skirted right past it into the gaming side. I'm like, I like my gaming spaces. I think I'd rather stay here. But I think it's got to be a little bit of both, and it'll probably depend on the company too that sees, like, you know, where is the investment going, kind of like you said. Like, they are, like, I think it's one of those things that's why I love internships so much, and again, like, why I'm really hoping that we'll see more and more of these get posted up, because I think it's a great way it's a win-win for both people, it's for both parties, right? Intern, hey, you get to gain some awesome experience doing something that's not a full-time role, or often is a full-time role hours-wise, but you're still an internship. You're not expected to have like the entry-level joke of 3 to 5 years experience, although that still happens way too often. But it's a win for them, but it's also a win for the company, because the company is able to say, hey, here's our values, here's kind of the projects you'll be working on. If this is a good fit for you, and we can literally like be a part of your development, a lot of gaming companies, although less now, I think you're seeing more and more companies start to use Unreal, Unity, although Unity's a whole thing as well, but more and more companies are kind of switching over to the mainline engines. But a lot of companies use proprietary game engines, so some of it's literally investment for them, being like, hey, if we can teach these interns how to use our proprietary engines, our software, that's a whole less ramp up that they'll have to do should they convert to a full-time role after graduation versus a new hire, right? So it's a win for both, I think, and I think that's why I'm passionate about internships and trying to get students into them and into these positions, because I think it really ends up being a beneficial thing for both parties.
And one of the things that with recruiters and with tech and all of that, and like I said, I mean, I can kind of speak on the recruiter side and what I tell people who are in their early careers. And to your question, Evan, like, what do you tell someone who's just kind of getting started that, hey, you're probably not going to be at this company for 10, 15 years. And so what I would focus on, and tell me if I'm wrong, Luke, but their ability to negotiate their salary and their ability to understand that they have kind of the upper hand with that a lot of times is really what I try to focus on, and really kind of tell them what power they have whenever they are a candidate and they want to be able to get the best possible salary. And one of the things, and this is why I think companies should change more to developing more in-house and developing people up, is because that job hopping does help you financially, historically in the past. Now, the gaps suck for sure, but if you want to increase your salary, the best way to do that is to go to another company and have them give you an increase from that point. And so being able to kind of tell people that and advise them and kind of say, hey, this is what you're able to do, this is what the what the market looks like, that's really something that I focus on for any type of career, but especially someone who's in gaming that is that unsure, in tech that is kind of unstable right now. This is what you need to focus on as well.
And Jonathan, I love that too, because I think you pointed out, a good recruiter thinks about those types of things. I was like, hey, how can I empower this candidate, right, to be upfront with offer and salary restrictions, and how can I like empower them to take advantage of this and like to lean into those pieces. So I think that's like one of the things that good recruiters will do. And there's not good recruiters everywhere, but I think that's one of the reasons that again, I like the gaming side, is that I think there is a lot of good people here. But at the same time, to your point of job hopping, we look at even some of these Activision Blizzard layoffs and stuff. You're seeing people that are pretty tenured. You're seeing over the last year, you're seeing people that are pretty tenured at some of these studios being affected. So one of the other truths of this is that, like, hey, the best time to be networking and preparing for the next job is while you currently have a job, right? Like you said, the gaps suck. So I think you also got to be realistic about both of those things at the same time, which is the fun middle ground, I guess.
It is. And, it's always been kind of a truth in recruitment that you're never more attractive as a candidate than when you already have a job. And so it's kind of, again, kind of bringing that out in the open. People need to know and understand that that's really kind of the best time if you want to change jobs. Have one, and look while you have one. Don't wait until you get let off. And to kind of speak to the good recruiter comment and all that, and honestly, the way that came about for me is because I don't want to negotiate at the end. Honestly, I don't want to know in 4 months or in 4 weeks or 3 weeks throughout the interview process that we're so far apart on salary that it's just not going to work out for anyone. So it is a little selfish in the sense that I don't want to create more work for myself, but it is also like, no, this is obviously the easiest and most transparent way to do it for people to stay, right? Because, if you get someone who interviews for a company that they really want to be at for the next, for 4 weeks, and then you lowball them for $20,000, they really want to work there, but are they really going to be happy 6 months later? It's as a recruiter, you have to, and you have to educate your managers and hope that they understand that.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Real quick, and I wanted to touch on this, the Games for Love. You said you're a volunteer recruiter there. It's a charity. Is that correct? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I tell, and as you're looking for like the things to do with like your off time, right? Like realizing that like, hey, one of the things if you really want to be involved in gaming, going all the way back to the beginning of this episode, right? Like we were talking about what are the things adjacent to gaming. There's a lot of cool orgs like this. Like Games for Love is a really cool organization that, is dedicated to like easing suffering, saving lives, creating sustainable futures for kids, and also like providing them with like gaming systems in hospital settings. It's got a cool like networking system for bringing in volunteers, League of Pros, basically bringing in professionals in the gaming industry that want to give back and like mentor and kind of show people how to do this kind of thing. And it's a volunteer position. If anybody wants to go, we're working on getting some of these roles posted, so we'll be seeing more and more of these going forward. But things like this, like these are a lot of things that I don't think everybody thinks about when they think about gaming. It's often like, oh man, I want to be the one I hear all the time is I want to be the concept artist, I want to be the character like splash artist, and in reality, like that's a small fraction of roles in such a small fraction of companies. But there's more and more things like Games for Love is a great organization. There's things like this that are kind of on the adjacent side. I think DigiPen is a cool example, right? We're accredited college. We have bachelor's and bachelor arts and bachelor science programs in computer science and game design and music audio, but we're 100% game focused, game and animation focused. Also not what people think of necessarily when they think about getting a job in gaming, but I think it's cool. When you start looking around, I think there's a lot of places, and not to maybe get ahead of a different topic, but I think there's a lot of places where people, if they're like, man, I would love to be involved in the gaming industry, I just don't have, I don't code, I don't do art. There's a lot of other ways that you can be involved with gaming and still do this. And I think, Games for Love is a good example of that.
That actually dovetails right into kind of where I was going to go is, let's move off of the corporate side and move on to DigiPen and the academic side of things. Because now you are, whereas before you were taking people that sort of probably already knew what they were doing and placing them at a company. And now you're taking people that more than likely know quite a bit less, and you're trying to get them ready for some other guy to place them in a company. And I'm fascinated, like DigiPen, and I'm old enough to remember when DigiPen was founded. I remember that being a huge story. It's like, I was in high school at the time, so like that was like, someone, in a lot of ways, for a lot of us nerds in the 90s, it was, Willy Wonka's hiring now. Like that was really what it was. It was like, you can actually, this is actually something that's doable. And it was kind of interesting. Now, I will say that DigiPen in the early days, I don't know if this is still the case, but in the early days had probably the worst ads possible back in the day. So that didn't do him any favors, or at least didn't do him any favors to didn't do them favors in terms of the parents. The prospective students, I'm sure, didn't care, or they enjoyed it, but giving it to the parents, like, I don't want to. This is out of some guy's van. Like, I don't want to send you to this college. But I'm assuming it's gotten a lot better.
I'd certainly hope it's gotten better. Yeah. Let me know if it hasn't. But
but DigiPen, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is DigiPen. It is ostensibly a tech school. I mean, in a lot of ways. But it is in this weird space, much like gaming is in general, this kind of weird intersection of tech, business, and art. And I'm curious what your thoughts are in terms of, I work, for me, I work at an art school, so we kind of do these same questions where it's, are you going to school to learn how to do a thing, or are you going to school to get a job in doing that thing? And I think both of them are equally valid paths, I think. It's like, I want to go to school so that I can get the knowledge to make my own game or make my own, do this, or I want to work at Bungie. I want to work at Blizzard, or I want to do narrative. Like, I want to get a job doing this kind of thing. Where do you see that kind of split in terms of like the prospective students coming in? Well, like, how many of them are looking for a job and how many of them are just looking for the skills?
Wow, great question. And I think the way that I kind of frame it is one of the questions. So especially, right now I'm an assistant director of admissions. I supervise a team of 3 admissions counselors as we recruit domestic students, undergrad students to come for our programs, right? And I think one of the biggest things that we talk about with our students that are looking at DigiPen is like, okay, do you like games, or do you like making games? Do you like art? Do you like the creative process? Do you like the programming process? Because I think, for sure, when hearing about DigiPen, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a school for video gamers. Like, this is awesome. I'm going to sit around and play Halo all day and do all this cool stuff. And it's like, yeah, sure, our students do a lot of play testing and testing their prototypes that you can find on Steam. But, at the end of the day, if the student likes playing games more than the actual creative or hard work of the process that goes into it, I think that ties into this question a lot. And at the end of the day, too, we see a lot of, we see some students that are either, coming out of the military, transferring from other schools, but we're still primarily like a first year, students coming from high school into college program. And, 18, 19-year-olds, like, there's so many areas of gaming that you could focus in that's bigger than just like the concept artist. Like, what about the tech artist that's working in the software that does the fluid simulation for your game, right? What about people that are doing these really specific roles that, honestly, coming out of high school, some students know about it, and I'm always impressed by the students that have done their homework and they're like, no, I want to be, a VFX artist for Bungie. Like, I know this is the role I want. Here's the programs I've already been following YouTube videos on, right? But a lot of our programs, in the way that I think education works as a whole, and why I've loved being in education for, how long have I been in education? 8-9 years, working in higher ed. It's we're teaching you both, right? We're helping you say, hey, what are the skills that you enjoy doing? What are the skills you need to level up in? Gaming, especially, like, you have to know your stuff. Studios can't afford to develop a person from scratch. They can certainly work on developing students, and I think that's why I like early career and intern roles, but you got to have the skills necessary. And at the same time, let's show you maybe jobs that you weren't even aware of. So you come in and you're like, I want to do narrative design. Cool. Narrative design is possibly one of the harder jobs to get into, because there's just so few narrative design positions when you look at what makes up a studio. If you're looking at, okay, instead of narrative design, can you do level design, encounter design? Can you back up and maybe even like switch over to 3D modeling, right? That's something that's a lot more roles are like realistically out there. So I think the long answer to your question, but I think it's got to be both. It's got to be, hey, you know what you want to do? Awesome. Let's help build that. Also, you may find a year into the program that you actually don't want to do narrative design. You want to go over to programming instead. You really like the nuts and bolts behind the scenes. And that's why I think higher education is so important, and finding people, if you're looking to get into this, finding people that can help develop that and come at it from a mindset of, hey, cool, you like doing this thing? Awesome. Why do you like doing this? What are jobs that could fit this thing, or what are jobs that are similar? Higher ed, I think, is not, again, this conversation, but the value of higher ed, I think, is coming under question more and more recently. But to me, I think that's one of the most valuable things, is the network you're getting that helps you kind of look at the skills and the jobs realistically.
Yeah. And for sure, I agree with that. Are there any programs that are particularly popular or kind of surprisingly popular?
I think our most popular program, we do a Bachelor of Arts in Game Design, so I think this is one that a lot of people fall into because it's the game design aspect is like, you know, we call it our like psychology humanities degree, so it's literally like, you know, why, like I obviously love Destiny, so it's like, okay, why does the Destiny guns feel so good to shoot? Like literally, what is the math behind how many bullets are they firing? It turns out if you slow the frames down, the melee animation sticks on, you know, it sticks that knife in the bad guy for like a couple seconds longer than it actually should. But because of those extra frames, it feels more weighty. Let's even back up and say like, okay, what are the bad guys you're fighting? Do they have like a captain and a grunts? And how many, you know, encounters should you build to make a compelling dungeon experience? Like that's our game design program. That's often what students think about when they think about, you know, I want to make games. It's like, okay, you're literally designing how the game works. Or it's also like I like to think of it as like the DM program in some ways. If you've ever been a DM for any, you know, TTRPG and you've had to build the encounter and be like, okay, am I going to kill my players? If I put a, you know, adult black dragon in this castle, will I kill my players instantly or will they have a chance? If you've ever asked those questions, game design is kind of one of the ones that's popular, but we also, you know, have full computer science programs for those that want to do a bit more on the coding side. And our art program, I think, is really cool because we have a pretty big emphasis on technical art, which is a field that you're seeing more and more in gaming. It's not just, hey, can you draw? Can you have the fundamentals? But can you actually use all these tools and softwares that are coming out to support the more technical side of art, which I think is a very fascinating area to look at. There's a couple of GDC talks, I think, that talk about the kind of the rise of technical art. So that's been one of the more interesting things to see recently, I think.
I just thought of this, and you know, feel free to fob me off on this one because it might get slightly uncomfortable just now. But so not only with DigiPen, but I'm assuming you kind of keep an eye on, or you're aware of other game design and video game based academic, you know, institutions and things like that. Is there anything being taught in the video game, like in the specific video game context, about, and this again, this question is going to sound more inflammatory than I want it to, so I'm just apologizing in advance, but like about ethics, about and not necessarily in an ethics in game journalism kind of way, but more of a like, looking at, we talked about MOBAs earlier, but like looking at free-to-play games and psychology and those kind of things. Like, is that part of that curriculum that you're looking at, either at DigiPen or are you seeing that in a wider area? Like, where does that kind of discussion happen in an academic setting?
For sure. I think, I don't know if I can point to a specific example, but I basically actually... I can't speak for all other schools. Obviously, I'm very biased on DigiPen. Go Dragons! But it ties in a lot.
How is the DigiPen football team, by the way?
You know, we don't have a football team. We do have a DigiPen athletics club, and our soccer team is pretty good in the past.
Hey, there you go. All right.
Good PNW school.
That's a football team.
Soccer.
That's a football team.
I swear, I thought you were going to say, "Oh, we have a great Madden team."
We have a great Madden. You know, I don't actually do have a Madden club. We have a lot of student clubs. I know we got our Halo club still going strong. Magic the Gathering D&D. I don't know if we have a
Halo's getting a lot of airtime this episode. I gotta.
They really are.
They better.
Yeah, we could do the debrief
check
of the Paramount show later. That was I don't know about that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, to go back to the question, I think the ethics piece is actually a pretty core principle of game design when you think about it and how we teach it. Where it's like, hey, in game design, you're designing something for a person to enjoy and use, right? Are you part of game design is monetization and is economics, right? Economic design. You're seeing more and more, you know, live service games, whether it's Destiny, whether it's, you know, I'm curious to see what Deadlock's going to look like. Speaking of Deadlock earlier, you know, you're seeing stuff like League and, you know, where they have these long tail past initial release of player engagement, of monetization and you know, revenue for the devs and the studios. But that all ties into how you design your game. Are you encouraging, you know, bad, you know, Skinner box type principles with your gameplay mechanics and your economy design, or are you doing something that's actually rewarding for the player and going to serve them? So we do talk a lot about all those things. I think the ethics piece almost comes as I don't want to say an afterthought, but like a natural kind of extension of those ideas, right? It's like, okay, if you're acknowledging that the way you design a game will have an impact on how a player plays it, what steps are you going to take to make sure that your game is represented as best as it can be? Is it to the point of making money? Are you exploiting a student, or exploiting a game and systems? So you're seeing more and more. And to go back to my earlier point about there's way more out there in gaming than I think people think about. There's literally job titles that are like economy designer or monetization designer, where you have to look at and see both from a revenue business perspective, how are you going to get these gameplay mechanics to get revenue, but also how are you going to develop a battle pass system that's rewarding the players, right? What about progression is rewarding, and when does it become exploitation? Like, those are positions that you will see for studios where it has stuff like economy design, monetization design. That's all 100% part of that game design, conversation for sure.
One of the things that I think is interesting, and I'm kind of curious what your perspective is. So obviously we're MegaDads. We're all dads that my biggest interaction with kids is my own, right? That's how I learned the previous generations. And you've been in roles, you said, I want to say since 2016, right? So you've been an admissions counselor since that time. So you've been in admissions and working with young people, for lack of a better term, for young men and young women and young people since that time. In general, academic-wise, or just what you've seen over the last 8 years, how have things changed, shifted, stay the same, that sort of stuff? What do you see?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I hope I qualify. I don't have kids, but we did just hit a year of having our rescue dog Fern. So I don't know if there's a category for mega dog dad, but I hope that's enough to get me qualified.
What
here.
Kind of dog is she?
It's actually he. Everybody always thinks it's a she because of Fern, but he came with the name Fern. He is a third. We did the DNA test for Christmas. He's a third shepherd, a third Australian cattle dog, and then boxer, pity, junkyard dog mix the rest of it. So he essentially looks like a German shepherd puppy, and you think he's going to stay that way forever, which I love.
Oh, that's adorable. So yeah.
Okay, Mr. Admissions Man, what does the game industry look like for dogs in the future? Like is it a growth market? We had
I certainly hope so. Yeah, we need to get the dog representation.
Well, a couple years ago, with Stray, they had
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Where's the dog version of Stray?
Yeah, exactly. What the heck?
Fetch.
It'd probably be way less exciting because it's like cats independent.
Actually, oh God,
just
no!
One mechanic.
I swear to God, I think I just saw a trailer for a game. It wasn't Fetch, but it's like you're playing a dog, and oh God, what the hell was it? I'm trying to remember what it was.
Was it the dog with the grappling hook?
No, but now I'm interested in that.
Okay, there's a trailer for that. I think in it might have been out of PAX or Game Award this summer, where you play as a dog with a grappling hook, and that's the main hook.
No pun intended. That is no. I swear to God, it was you're a dog looking for, like, you basically it's the classic. You wake up in an empty house and you're trying to find your master. It's like I'm trying to suit. Oh God, I want to say I feel like this is not a fever dream, but I feel like I did that. But anyway, yes. Going back to that original question is what does, like Jonathan mentioned, it's we're parents. I don't think any of our kids are in a position where we have to start thinking about college quite yet. But what is it like to talk to parents, especially in the last 10 years?
Absolutely.
There's been so many high profile stories, not just in the layoff side of things, but also in, like, you look at Riot Games and that culture that they and all the harassment stories and all of that.
Yep.
And Riot, I'm not signaling out Riot, I'm just saying there's a lot of these stories. Like, is it harder to sell students and parents on the idea of a kid getting a career in this industry?
For sure. And I think so it's almost like two questions there. So I think the first one is like what I've seen changed over the I started working in higher ed in admissions about 2016. I think even the last couple years you're seeing the biggest question on people's minds is like, is college still worth it, right? Like, that's the biggest question everybody's looking at. Does it financially make sense to do the investment that we're seeing? And that's one of the biggest questions that we're seeing. So what you're seeing as students, I'm continually amazed by, like, I feel like there's some talk in I don't want to say like modern crotchety old people complaining about young people not paying attention or giving enough crap about stuff. And the students that I've seen and worked with that are like starting nonprofits to like encourage mental health, or supporting students, or holding down part-time jobs to support their family while applying to college and busting their asses to try to get scholarship to come here. Like I think that's one of the inspiring things that's kept me in higher ed, is like seeing how committed these students are to like seeing higher ed as something that like, hey, this degree, studies still show that degree earners tend to earn better wages. This degree will pay back to me and my family in the future. So I've been super impressed. I think that's one of the things that is kind of addicting when you're working in higher ed and working with the students. Like, you see the joy and the effort that they get to put in. So it's very rewarding in that way. And I think I see that. And for the next question, I mean, especially when you kind of dial into DigiPen and gaming, and especially for a school that, you know, a lot of our accreditation comes from being able to prove employment post-grad. So we actually take that very seriously for having making sure that our students get jobs. There are certain programs that we could accept more students to, but we cap because there's just not enough roles for these students. So we don't want to graduate a bunch of students, pat them on the back, say, hey, here's your diploma. Too bad there's not enough jobs out there for you. So we take that very seriously. And I think this is where we get lucky, because there's something like 300 different game studios in the Seattle Bellevue area. I mean, large and small. It really is kind of one of the gaming hubs when you think of the West Coast. You know, it's Seattle Bellevue. It's some stuff down in San Francisco and LA. But it really is one of the biggest hubs that you're seeing. And I think we get lucky off that, where we have a lot of people that recognize DigiPen students, that look for our students. So I think, you know, when talking with students and parents, that's one of the things we always touch on, is like, hey, we don't have to just like pretend that our students get jobs in gaming and kind of wiggle the room. It's like, no, our students really are working on these titles. Our alumni wall encompasses, I think, like 2,000 different shipped titles. So I think for us, it's helpful to have that kind of like, hey, we can prove it. we know your students are getting jobs in these areas. But absolutely, I mean, that's the biggest key thing about higher education, is that it's a lot of people really questioning, hey, is this actually worth it? Especially in something like gaming. Can I learn off the YouTube, you know, Unreal tutorials that are out there? Can I learn the skills necessary? Yeah, you definitely could learn. You know, I always tell people that are trying to get in, and especially for like when I talk to more of the early career people of like, or transitional, how do I get into gaming if I'm not in gaming? I'm like, wow, you could find so many great tutorials on Unreal, workshops, on all sorts of stuff to get your feet wet. You can learn to a pretty high level nowadays in some of these like gaming engine tool sets. But I think one of the things that higher ed still gives you is that network, your faculty, the staff, the people that I have connections to, and the community there as well. But there are still things that you can do for the transitional candidates to try to recreate that as well. So I think that answered your question. I'm starting to ramble about, you know, the broader industry stuff, but I think that answered
rambling.
At least the first two questions.
Oh, rambling's good.
Yeah, rambling is fabulous. Because again, no one's listening to the show for us. It's for you. You're the celebrity here. So we're all here for you, man. To kind of wrap it up here, you're a little biased because you work for a college. Work for a college educating future game people. But setting that aside, do you think this is a worthwhile industry to, I don't want to say to get involved with, because obviously there's many hundreds of reasons to get involved with it, but it's more of a like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I completely had a brain fart.
I think I know what you mean. So is it in the industry that becomes desirable? Is it something that you want to look at? Is it like, when you think of the top industries for graduates to go into, is gaming still one of them, if with everything that's going on right now?
For sure. No, great. It's a great question, very practical question, and I think the way that I'd answer, I think it would be, depends on your priorities, right? I mean, look at, you know, how many people love games, right? At the end of the day, if you're making a game, like seeing your name in the credits when the credits roll on a game that you shipped, one, it's so hard to get a game to ship, let alone like getting to see your name in it. Like, I think that's an awesome feeling, and I think for the right student and the right creative, right, like it can be something to aspire to. I think you got to be realistic about it. I think one of the things I've told, you know, when there's some of the networking that you can do on LinkedIn, there's the list of mentors put together by Amir Satvat, which is a great resource for anybody looking to get mentored or have game career resources. Yeah, awesome, right? So yeah, I've told people that I've connected with that through that, I'm like, hey, be realistic about this. If you're going to pursue something in gaming, know the industry and know it can have ups and downs. Right now we're in a bit of a down. You're seeing that. I think people are pretty optimistic that we'll get through this, and get to a period of ups again. But I think what keeps people in this industry is that the people in community that you meet, the level of work and creative projects that you're able to see to fruition, right? But for someone looking to get in, I think it's always important to be realistic and be like, hey, one of the cool things about it is like, wow, look at how many people are needing artists and graphic designers and people that are, in creative roles. Look at how many people are hiring, general tech. Like a lot of the skills you learn in like our CS programs will apply to general tech, right? So don't quit your day job, as much as, that phrase has gone around. But I think I'm obviously biased on this because for me, it was kind of a dream come true to like start being able to have these conversations that I loved having for years in kind of a professional setting. And, today actually we had our preview day where we had 50 plus students that are coming to check out the campus, and being able to talk about game design and pipelines with them and have a whole session with our art faculty and hear about how excited students are. I'm like, that's a pretty awesome thing to be a part of. So I'm obviously biased. I think it is. I think you got to be realistic, but I think one of the things you're seeing is that when you get there and you have the communities, you have those highs. I think that's why a lot of people stick around in the industry for a long, long time that you can see.
Okay, one last question. You mentioned the alumni board. Here's all the ship titles from our students. Are there any games, and you don't have to name anything in particular, but are there any games on there that are maybe slightly smaller font so they don't call as much attention to themselves? Yeah, we were involved, but we weren't really involved in that game.
Yeah, the Colonial Marines thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Colonial Marines. It's a pretty deep cut. I mean, you obviously have like the Halos and Destiny 2s, and you'll see a lot of those on there. So I think the couple I'd shout out would be Portal. Some people don't know Portal actually started as a DigiPen student project, and then that team essentially got picked up by Valve to go make Portal for Valve. One of our best success stories, our main conference room for our admission staff is named after the original project name of that project before it was Portal. But I also just add on the other side, on the animation side, I don't know if this is like as I'm getting older and have a dog, that I'm a dog dad too, but I cry more easily at movies. And a couple of our alumni worked on Klaus, which is a Christmas movie on Netflix. Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Great animation. Watch it every year, cry every single year. It's like the one time a year just I cry, and it's that movie. So that was one of the recent ones I saw on the alumni wall that I was like, wait, our students worked on Klaus? I love that movie. So we do obviously the games and animation side, but that one got me recently.
All right.
It's one of those movies that you see as an example of like animation doing something artistic rather than just trying to mimic Pixar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's pretty cool.
Well, Luke, you have got obviously you got DigiPen, and there'll be links to everything in the show notes for this. But obviously, you're involved with DigiPen. You don't have a personal website, but you do have the LinkedIn, which God bless you. I during my brief period of unemployment, I was on LinkedIn every day, and I wanted to commit various horrible acts upon myself. Just being on there. So God bless you for sticking with that. But like, where can people find more information about what you do and kind of follow your career and all of that?
For sure. No, I think for me also, it came out of a similar desperation to be like, okay, I got to be on the stupid site. Well, let me try my best to do something with it. Right. But I think honestly, it's turned into me like something I've really enjoyed. And I think part of why, anybody who's listening, feel free to add me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Happy to chat. Send me that, send me a note that you listen to this podcast, and would love to connect with you more. But I think for me, the way that I view it is like, hey, this is whether we like it or not, it's a tool that could help you get a job, right? Let's help you make it the best version. Let's look at your profile. Are you posting? There's a whole network of people out there. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like best about it is not to sound like a LinkedIn influencer, because I hate that term, but like, the gaming side of it, once you start seeing people within those gaming conversations on LinkedIn, like, you're going to connect with people in your network that could be potential, recommendations for you. They could be potential future employees with you, right? So to me, I'm like, hey, this is something that could be helpful to you. Let's help people try to do this better. So that's honestly the main place that I'm kind of active and doing a lot of stuff. I just started my threads. I try to do the mass, migration from the site that shall not be named. So you can find me at Luke Talks Games on Threads as well, and doing some Instagram stuff. But honestly, LinkedIn, I'm like, hey, if I'm gonna have to use this, if other people are gonna have to use this while they're laid off, let's try to make it be helpful and post stuff on there that's about gaming. And you'll hear me talk about my request for the Donkey Kong 64 remaster, which I'm hoping Nintendo will eventually see on there, but so far they haven't contacted me about that. So
they'd be fools.
Yeah, happy to connect with
if
anybody
they did
else.
not do that.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. One of these days, Donkey Kong 64. We got to hear that DK rap again someday. So I'm holding out.
So, and am I saying this right? You brought your dog to GDC?
I did not. I think that was Desiree. There's a community. It's again, if you're on LinkedIn, follow Amir Satvat. He's got hands down the best games resource workshop. But there is Desiree and her service dog do show up at a lot of events like GDC, PAX West, Emerald City Comic Con. If you see a dog walking around in a Loki costume, it's probably her.
All right, good to know. So outside of DigiPen, like, and you've already talked about LinkedIn. Like, what are the good resources for people looking to either to start learning what they need to learn to get into the industry or start actually pursuing a career?
Yep. No, it's a great question. And I think the couple things that I'd say, the couple of resources, right? So find the biggest things that you're going to need to go. If you're like, man, I've after listening to this whole podcast of rambling and talking about how hard it is and how the industry is in a tough spot right now, I still want to do it. I think the biggest couple things that I always tell people that ask me about this, it's like you got to work on yourself. You got to find the skills that you're working on, right? So whether that's, hey, I want to be a recruiter, I want to be in people ops, I want to be in HR, be the best HR person that you can be wherever you're at. Gaming companies need HR managers, right? If you're employee experience, if you're facilities, gaming industries need those too, right? Studios need those too. If you're an artist, if you're wanting to go into programming, you have to be able to start learning some of those basics. So Amir Satvat's is great game resources. Like I talked about, there's 1,500 plus mentors on there that from all across the gaming studio. I always recommend things like following along with jobs to see what are posted. So hitmarker.net is a site that I recommend a lot. It's a job site specifically that's pulling gaming jobs, and so it'll pull across all studios. So start looking through and seeing what things could be a resource there. Other thing, people diss on this sometimes, but the YouTube tutorials are a great place to start if you're looking to get more game engine experience. There's so much out there. If you search Unreal Game Engine tutorials, there's a ton out there to show you how to start working in engine, right? That's always kind of what I recommend, is like try to find that niche where you're going to be able to contribute, and whether that's, hey, this is something outside of gaming, but it turns out gaming studios need this role. I'm going to be the best whatever that I can be, and then start following these gaming voices and start following these studios. Or if it's something that's like, man, it is more technical, find ways to start doing the same work, right? You're not a gaming studio. Even for the early career transitional roles, they're going to say, hey, has this person done some experience, right? So there's sites where you can find game jams. If you're someone that's like, yeah, I've dinked around a little bit in Unreal Engine, I've made some prototypes, I've gotten this far, I've designed some characters, I've done like a game design doc before, take it to the next level and find a game jam. Find a group of people that are willing to kind of come together and make something. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is just make something. If you're interested in this field, there's more tools out there than ever to just make something on your own, but then take it to the next level, find other people, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through, another site, Discord servers. There's a lot of cool places where you can find like Discord servers that are kind of built around this idea of like connecting people that want to start making stuff to get that experience. Those would be just like without doing a whole nother podcast just on, getting into games from not the higher ed route. Those would be some of the areas that I'd kind of recommend starting with for sure.
To piggyback off of that, find people in the gaming industry and talk to them. And again, whether it's on LinkedIn, just ask them questions, ask them something about, what they do, whether it's in person, whether a friend of a friend or something like that, engage with them. Because what I found is it really is a community, Luke, and you attest to this. They really want to help each other. And you can really tap into that as well. If you're just trying to get in, there's so many people who want to help you as well. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, again, just check out Luke Davis. Probably if you're Googling him, do Luke Davis DigiPen. That might be the best way to find the right one. Or if you're into surfers, just Google it and let the cold hand of the algorithm decide who you're looking at.
Yeah, when has that ever gone wrong?
When has it ever gone wrong? I am happy to announce that all the listeners at MegaDads will be getting a coupon code for a year at DigiPen. $10 off the first year.
$10.
$10 off. Just use
gosh.
MegaDads at checkout, and you can, and we will apply that. No, please don't do that. That would I'm sure I can feel the burning stare of my boss on the back of my head right now. I probably shouldn't say that. But Luke, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for enlightening me in particular on some of this stuff. And as someone that I think I did apply back in the day, like in that first year of DigiPen. I obviously didn't make it, but that may be for the best. That may be, as much as we were talking about how bad the industry is now. If I had been in there from the beginning, it might be even worse. So that's probably for the best that it didn't work out. But Luke, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, guys. Thanks for having me. I'll get to work on seeing if we can get that honorary degree somewhere in our back closet.
There we go.
I can pull that out for you.
I could use an honorary doctorate. That's
a door opener for me.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Let me see what I can do. No promises.
Awesome.
Thanks, Luke.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan, for indulging me on this very interesting little experiment we're doing here.
It's my pleasure.
In the meantime, check out megadads.org for the show notes as well as all the other great MegaDads content that we're doing. Jonathan, are you doing any reviews or any other things for the website coming up?
I think I do have a review coming up. I need to get it in, so it will be my first scary game review, and then I hope to do a bit more, trying to be a bit more active now that the job thing is settled and all of that.
Yes, that's always nice. It's always nice.
Yes.
And I might actually have a review. I don't know when it'll be out relative to this show, but I should have something shortly as well. So, in the meantime, thank you as always for listening, and keep playing games. MegaDads Overworld is powered by Pants and part of MegaDads.org, the most tolerant place for podcast hosts ever. We love them.